And that's why I say half of Roy belongs to me, or half of me belongs to Roy.
Rutger Hauer was not just an actor. He was a living testament to what it means to rise, to fall, and to rise again. Audiences remember the icy gaze that could speak 1,000 words, the silences more suffocating than any scream, where a rebellious soul still clung to dignity. From the lonely night on horseback under the European skies to the wanderer crossing Hollywood's deserts, Rutger Hauer always chose the hardest path: absolute honesty with his characters and with himself. Born amid the smoke and fire of war, raised in art classrooms only to abandon them for the open sea, wielding a hammer like a laborer and standing on stage like a warrior of emotion, Rutger Hauer's life was an unending trial. Haunted by violence, yet often embodying souls at the edge of darkness, he turned that contradiction into creative fire. Sharp, yet compassionate. Fierce, yet fragile. In a world of cinema prone to artifice, Hauer brought a raw authenticity that could never be mass-produced, something the camera could only catch when it ignited across his face. For nearly half a century, he stood at the border between glory and tragedy, transforming everyday experience. The scent of sweat from labor, the solitude of exile, the tenderness of a man who despised violence, into roles that carried a heartbeat. And then, in that moment when the rain fell on the rooftops of the future, a single line etched his name into film history. Not loud, not ostentatious, just the truth of a human being learning how to exist. Now let us step into that journey. From a childhood scarred by war, through years of rebellious self-forging, to the moment he redefined the villain and carved out an immortal symbol. This is not merely the story of Rutger Hauer. It is the story of freedom, dignity, and the endurance of a flame tempered in the storm. But that flame did not ignite from nowhere. It was lit from a childhood shaped by war, from a Dutch boy adrift in his own family, where the journey to becoming Rutger Hauer truly began. Rutger Hauer was born on January 23, 1944, in Breukelen, Utrecht, the Netherlands, during the German occupation in World War II. In a 1981 interview, he once said, "I was born during the war, and I think that's why I have deep roots in pacifism. Violence frightens me." His parents, Tonke, Mellema, and Arend Hauer, were both actors and teachers, running an acting school near Amsterdam. Rutger had 3 older sisters. Yet in a family where the stage lights shone brighter than the dinner table, he received little attention. With his father, he was almost a stranger. Later in life, it was writer Eric Hazelhoff Rolf Zema, whom he met on the set of Soldier of Orange, who became the true father figure he had lacked. As a child, Hauer was sent to a Rudolf Steiner school to nurture his creativity, but his restless spirit refused to stay still. At 15, he dropped out, joining the Merchant Navy to wander from port to port for a year. His dream of becoming a captain collapsed when he discovered he was colorblind by birth. Returning home, the tall Dutch youth survived on a string of manual jobs: electrician, carpenter, any work he could find. He swung a hammer by day and studied at night to earn his diploma. Those years forged his toughness, but they also left him with a raw, ordinary sensitivity. The feel of calloused hands, the smell of sweat from labor, details he would later breathe into his characters, making them more than roles, but real human beings. Eventually, he chose the path his parents had once wished for him, enrolling in the Academy for Theater and Dance in Amsterdam. Yet even there, rebellion never left him. He quit midway to join the army, trained as a combat medic, then quickly left the service, unable to accept violence and lethal weapons. Only when he returned to school and graduated in 1967 did Rutger Hauer truly find the stage, a place where he could both rebel and remain faithful to his deepest instincts. Rutger Hauer first stepped onto the stage at the age of 11, playing Eurysakes in Ajax. No one then could have imagined that this blonde-haired boy would one day become a face that helped define an entire generation of European cinema. Yet it wasn't until after graduating from the Academy for Theater and Dance in Amsterdam in 1967 that Hauer truly arrived as a professional actor. He spent 5 years with the toneel group Noorder Compagnie theater troupe, where he forged his own unique language, eyes that could speak entire monologues, silences that evoked whole universes of feeling, and gestures so haunting they lingered long after the curtain fell. The turning point came in 1969. Director Paul Verhoeven recognized in Hauer a raw, untamed energy waiting to be unleashed, and cast him in the lead role of the television series Floris. Overnight, Hauer went from an anonymous stage actor to a national star. Dutch audiences embraced him as their own Robin Hood, a swashbuckling hero on horseback, sword flashing, igniting a thirst for adventure. But for Hauer, domestic fame was never enough. He wanted more, and he got it when Verhoeven cast him again in Turkish Delight, 1973. As Eric, an artist consumed by both wild passion and gnawing despair, Hauer bared his soul, raw, fragile, and fierce. The film shocked audiences, earned an Academy Award nomination, and forced the world to take notice of his name. He began testing Hollywood waters with The Wilby Conspiracy, 1975, a minor supporting role soon forgotten. But instead of growing discouraged, Hauer chose rebellion. He built his own trailer to live on the road, not for leisure, but to chase opportunities wherever they appeared. I didn't wait for Hollywood to open its doors for me. I built my own door, he once said. That trailer rolled across Europe and all the way to America, becoming a symbol of Hauer's free-spirited, uncompromising life. While waiting for an international breakthrough, he continued to shake up Dutch cinema. Katie Tippel, 1975, cast him as the downtrodden, crushed by society. Soldier of Orange, 1977, turned him into a wartime icon for an entire nation. And Spetters, 1980, pushed every boundary, diving headlong into sexuality and naked ambition, sparking outrage across Dutch society. Wherever there was controversy, Hauer was there, embracing it as his artistic manifesto. Alongside fellow actor Jeroen Krabbe, Rutger Hauer became one of the trailblazers of modern Dutch cinema, shaping a generation that refused to accept conformity. In 1981, Rutger Hauer first set foot on a Hollywood set with the action film Nighthawks, co-starring alongside Sylvester Stallone. It was far from an easy start. The film was shot mostly at night with an exhausting schedule, and right in the middle of filming, Hauer received devastating news. Both his mother and his closest friend had passed away. He returned to the Netherlands to attend their funerals, but within days, he was back on set. Despite the personal turmoil and grueling conditions, Hauer later wrote in his autobiography that he was grateful to have stayed, because this film brought him recognition in Hollywood and launched his remarkable international career. And fate soon handed him a far greater opportunity. In 1982, when director Ridley Scott cast Rutger Hauer as Roy Batty in Blade Runner, he gave him the chance to embody one of cinema's most immortal icons. Blade Runner, adapted from Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, unfolds in a dystopian future where replicants, bioengineered humans nearly indistinguishable from the real thing, are created to take on society's most dangerous and grueling labor. To keep them under control, their creators installed two constraints: emotions suppressed from the start and lifespans limited to just 4 years, ensuring they could never rise up. Roy Batty, Hauer's character, is a Nexus 6 replicant created by Dr. Tyrell on January 8, 2016, designed specifically as a combat soldier for off-world military campaigns. After years of living amid war and death, Roy begins to develop emotions. Most hauntingly, the fear of his own end, something unheard of in newly created replicants. That fear drives Roy and 4 others to rebel. They kill 23 people in a space colony, seize a shuttle, and return to Earth with only one desperate purpose: to find a way to extend their lives. From the moment he read the script, Rutger Hauer understood that Roy Batty could not be portrayed merely as a killing machine. To Hauer, Batty was a living paradox, a fearsome warrior, yet a fragile soul trembling in the face of extinction. Hauer infused the role with everything he had honed from the stage: silences that cut deep, eyes heavy with both philosophy and fear, movements that were at once awkward and powerful, like a young soul still learning to inhabit its own body. Under Hauer's hand, Roy Batty ceased to be a mere antagonist. He became the emotional heart of Blade Runner, a symbol of the primal human urge to survive, of rebellion rooted in compassion in a world drained of mercy. The pinnacle of his performance comes in the final scene. After Pris, Roy's lover, is killed by Rick Deckard, Roy could have taken revenge. Instead, he saves Deckard from falling to his death, and in that moment, sits down in the cold rain, cradling a white dove in his hands. The night before filming that scene, Rutger Hauer, feeling that the original dialogue was too mechanical, rewrote it entirely. Keeping only 2 short lines, he added the now immortal words: "All those moments will be lost, like tears in rain." No soundtrack, no flashy cinematic effects, just tear-blurred eyes, a quiet, trembling voice, and the sound of rain falling on a desolate rooftop. That moment didn't just redeem Roy Batty, it redeemed Blade Runner itself. The Tears in Rain monologue became one of the most quoted lines in film history, and Ridley Scott later admitted that without Hauer and that final scene, Blade Runner might have been buried as a failure. But Blade Runner did more than humanize Roy Batty. It revealed the independent evolution of replicants when they lived long enough to feel real emotions. Roy and Pris weren't just partners in rebellion, they were bound by a profound love, something their creators had never foreseen. It was his love for Pris that fueled Roy's desperate search for immortality. When she was killed, Roy was consumed with anguish, yet instead of blind revenge, he chose to save Deckard's life. In that act, Roy forced Deckard and humanity itself to witness that replicants were not mere tools, but beings with compassion, humanity, and the right to exist as much as any flesh and blood person. Roy's death was a haunting elegy. He died in peace, releasing a white dove into the gray, rain-soaked sky, his soul dissolving into nature. It was a hymn to the fragility, yet permanence of memory, to the brevity and value of life, even for artificial beings. Upon release, however, Blade Runner was far from warmly embraced. Critics derided it as too slow, too bleak, too philosophical. At the box office, it barely scraped over $26 million domestically, hardly covering production costs. Many reviewers dismissed it as ponderous, cold, and all style with no heart. Warner Brothers, fearing audiences wouldn't understand the story, intervened heavily, forcing Ridley Scott to add Deckard's clumsy voiceover narration, and even altering the ending to show Deckard and Rachel escaping together in an awkwardly happy resolution. Both Hauer and Scott objected, but at the time, they were powerless to stop it. Amid this disappointment, Blade Runner quietly disappeared from theaters, lumped together with the other summer flops of that year. No one then could have imagined that this very film, with its cold neon glow, endless rain, and its aching question, "What does it mean to be human?" would go on to redefine the aesthetics and philosophy of science fiction cinema for the next 3 decades. It wasn't until the 1990s when the director's cut was released, removing the voiceover narration and restoring the original bleak ending, that audiences began to truly reassess Blade Runner. They realized the film hadn't failed because it was weak. It had failed because it was ahead of its time. Of course, Roy Batty had committed murder, and, in theory, he could be seen as a villain. But his deepest motives, the despair in the face of death, the longing to live, to be loved, made him more tragic than evil. He was the most painful reflection of a world that created beings with emotions only to deny them the right to exist. For Rutger Hauer, Roy Batty was more than a breakthrough role. It was the moment he carved his name into cinema history, shaping a type of character never seen before. Every role he played afterward, from Ladyhawke to the Hitcher, from Sin City to Hobo with a Shotgun, carried the shadow of Roy Batty, loneliness, rebellion, and a quiet but fierce humanity in the darkness. Entering the 1980s, Rutger Hauer continued to broaden his image in the eyes of audiences through a wide range of roles: heroes and villains, romantic knights and rebellious souls. In 1985, he appeared in Ladyhawke, a fantasy epic, as the Knight Navarre, a man cursed to live a life forever separated from the woman he loved. Filming took place in the icy hills of Italy and France, where Hauer often rode on treacherous terrain clad in armor weighing more than 20 kilograms. Interestingly, the horse he rode, Goliath, a massive and rather stubborn creature, became so dear to Hauer that after filming Wrapped, he tried to buy it. His request was denied as Goliath was already contracted for other productions. It was a small detail, but it perfectly mirrored the spirit of Navarre as Hauer portrayed him, loyal, strong, and profoundly tender. A year later, in 1986, Hauer made a powerful impression in The Hitcher, playing serial killer John Ryder. Refusing half measures, Hauer performed most of the dangerous stunts himself, including high-speed driving sequences without a double. In one of the film's most memorable scenes, Ryder stands silently on a deserted highway in the middle of the desert, a shot not in the original script. Hauer proposed it just before filming began, with a simple but razor-sharp explanation. He should appear like death without the need for explanation. That bold choice created a chilling moment, cementing the film's place in 1980s horror history. In 1989, Rutger Hauer once again challenged himself by playing Nick Parker in Blind Fury, a blind Vietnam veteran who wields a sword to protect others. To prepare for the role, he spent 3 months training in swordsmanship with Japanese masters, while also practicing moving and fighting completely blindfolded. In some action scenes, Hauer truly could not see, yet he executed complex sequences without the use of a stunt double. "When you can't see, you have to feel," he said of the experience. "It changed the way I acted entirely, By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Rutger Hauer became unexpectedly famous in the UK, not through films, but through a series of Guinness commercials. Clad in black, silent, and mysterious, his image struck a chord with audiences. Ironically, Hauer himself disliked the taste of Guinness, often spitting it out after each take. Yet the campaign exceeded all expectations. Guinness sales soared, and Hauer's image became inseparably linked with a refined elegance tinged with rebellion in the eyes of the British public. As the 1990s progressed, his Hollywood career began to slow. His roles grew increasingly diverse in genre but smaller in scale. Still, for Hauer, every character, large or small, was an opportunity to reinvent himself, to avoid ever repeating what he had done before. The 2000s saw an impressive resurgence with Sin City, 2005, and Batman Begins, 2005, where Hauer brought restraint and seasoned depth to each performance. And in 2011, well into his 60s, he stunned audiences once again in Hobo with a Shotgun, portraying a vagrant-turned-vigilante who wields a shotgun to cleanse a rotten city. It was not just an outburst of violence, it was the manifesto of a lonely man, fighting for whatever scraps of justice remained. Throughout his journey, Rutger Hauer held fast to one unchanging principle. Every role was a blank page. No formulas, no repetition, only absolute honesty with the character and with himself. Yet behind that brilliance, Hauer's private life told a far quieter story. Silent, contemplative, and at times filled with more emptiness than even his darkest roles. When still very young, Hauer married Heidi Mertz, a Swiss pianist. Together they had a daughter, Aisha Hauer, born in 1966. But the marriage quickly unraveled. Not long after Aisha's birth, it ended quietly. Hauer rarely spoke of his first marriage. On the rare occasions he did, he simply admitted that at that stage of his life he was too young, too busy, and didn't really understand what long-term responsibility meant. His career was blossoming, constant travel pulled him away, and the growing demands of acting made it nearly impossible for him to sustain a stable family life. His relationship with Aisha, who later became an actress herself, was equally complex. Though bound by blood, Rutger and his daughter did not always share a close bond. His itinerant life and reserved personality often created a distance that was difficult to bridge. Beyond acting, he cultivated a very personal passion, repairing trucks and motorcycles, and even building his own trailer for a life on the road. For Hauer, that trailer was not just a vehicle, it was a declaration of freedom, a refusal to conform, a way to escape dependence. His life truly changed in 1968 when Rutger Hauer met Ineke ten Cate, a Dutch painter and sculptor. Amidst the touring theater productions and his early films, Hauer discovered in Ineke something he had never known before: calmness and steadfastness. They quickly grew close, but did not rush into marriage. For 17 years, they chose to live together quietly, avoiding the spotlight and the weight of traditional expectations. For a man like Hauer, who rejected conformity in every form, that freedom became the strongest foundation. In 1985, after nearly 2 decades together, Rutger Hauer and Ineke ten Cate finally married. Not because they needed a label, but because after all those years they had proven, to each other and to the world, that love doesn't need display, only endurance. They had no children together, but their bond was nearly unbreakable. While Hauer traveled the world for his film career, Ineke remained his steady harbor, the silent force behind the scenes. And when Hauer founded the Starfish Foundation to raise awareness of HIV/AIDS, Ineki was his co-founder and later carried on the charity work after him. In a world where everything constantly shifted, the relationship between Hauer and Ineki, simple, patient, and loyal, was like an underground stream, quietly flowing through his turbulent life. Ineki was not just his partner, but the person who helped him maintain psychological balance while embodying lonely, tormented characters on screen. Thanks to this enduring bond, Hauer managed to keep his career free from the scandals and collapses that plagued so many of his contemporaries. Ineki was also the one who encouraged him to dedicate himself more deeply to philanthropy after 2000. On July 19, 2019, Rutger Hauer passed away at his home in Beestertswag, Friesland, the Netherlands, after a short battle with pancreatic cancer. He was 75 years old. News of his death was announced on July 24, 2019, after a private funeral had already been held. His passing left fans around the world shocked and grieving. Many noted the uncanny coincidence that he died in 2019, the very year his character Roy Batty in Blade Runner meets his end in the film. The parallel only deepened the symbolic weight of his most iconic role. After Hauer's death, his wife, Ineki Ten Kate, continued to maintain the work of the Rutger Hauer Starfish Association, honoring her commitment to her husband's legacy. Known for her private and discreet nature, Ineki has rarely appeared before the public or the media, and little is known about her life today. Rutger Hauer was not only a gifted actor, but also a man of compassion, dedicated to causes beyond the screen. His passing was a profound loss to world cinema and to those who admired him. In his final years, Hauer remained creatively active, brimming with energy. He took part in films, television, and even video games, proving his versatility and commitment to storytelling until the very end. In 2017, he voiced Daniel Lazarski in the critically acclaimed sci-fi horror game Observer. The role showed not only his adaptability to new media, but also his undying passion for the art of narrative. In 2018, he appeared in the western The Sisters Brothers, praised by critics, where he played the Commodore, a mysterious, powerful, and shadowy figure. Though a supporting role, Hauer's presence left a lasting impression. In 2019, just before his health deteriorated, Hauer also lent his voice to Master Xehanort in the blockbuster video game Kingdom Hearts 3. Even in this format, he brought a distinct emotional depth that set him apart. During these years, Rutger Hauer chose to live quietly in the countryside of Friesland. He stepped back from the media spotlight, focusing on personal projects, writing, and continuing the work of the Starfish Foundation. He became something of a modern hermit, not cut off from society, but quietly removed from the noise of the entertainment world, keeping for himself a rhythm of life that was free and serene. Rutger Hauer's career spanned nearly 50 years, with more than 170 roles across film, television, and video games. He was celebrated not only for playing terrifying villains or indomitable heroes, but for his ability to breathe into each role a rare humanity, something that made his characters unforgettable even after a single viewing. If Hollywood often celebrates its A-list superstars, Rutger Hauer proved the opposite. Sometimes it is the shadows that cast the most enduring light. His legacy cannot be measured by box office numbers, but by the vitality of the haunting figures he brought to life. Roy Batty in Blade Runner was not just a role. It was a warning about a future where humanity forgets its compassion. John Ryder in The Hitcher became the template for a generation of psychological villains in horror films. And Nick Parker in Blind Fury showed that even the most improbable characters could be infused with a soul through absolute dedication. Hauer's influence extended beyond cinema. He embodied a class of European artists who dared to venture into Hollywood without being consumed by it. He navigated that ruthless system like a traveler, sometimes cast aside, sometimes quietly returning, but never losing his essence, a performer truthful to his roles, no matter how large or small. The generations that followed, from Viggo Mortensen to Mads Mikkelsen, walked in some way the path Hauer had opened, blending Nordic grit with Hollywood ferocity to create characters both magnetic and haunting. In European film schools, the role of Roy Batty is still studied as a lesson in the art of humanizing the villain. Even after his passing, Rutger Hauer remains present. The film workshops he once led in Rotterdam, his reminders about the necessity of freedom in creation, have become guiding principles for many young filmmakers. At memorials, people do not speak of him in numbers but in lines of dialogue, a rare honor that only a few artists in history have achieved. Perhaps the greatest influence Rutger Hauer left behind is a belief that cinema does not need to please the masses to achieve immortality. All it takes is one role, true enough, human enough, for it to live forever, transcending even the death of the one who created it. And Rutger Hauer, with his proud silence, became living proof of that. Rutger Hauer may be gone, but he did not leave behind a void like so many glittering stars that flare out and vanish. What he left was an imprint, unassuming, unboastful, yet so deep it can never be erased. In the memory of cinema, people don't recall Rutger Hauer as a superstar, endlessly pursued by fame, but as a solitary wanderer passing through Hollywood with icy eyes that always concealed a quiet human sorrow. He proved that cinema doesn't need a lifetime of blockbusters to become immortal. Only one role that touches the core of what it means to be human, and it will echo forever. And so, the image of Roy Batty lifting his head in the rain, delivering the tears in rain lines that Hauer himself wrote, transcended the boundaries of a single film. It became a symbol of humanity's shared fear and longing, of the brevity yet preciousness of life, whether human or replicant. Today, when Rutger Hauer's name is mentioned, few speak of box office numbers, awards, or stardom. What lingers is the feeling he left behind, something both bleak and beautiful, despairing, yet profoundly humane. And that is the greatest victory an artist can achieve, the triumph of outlasting time itself. If you too have ever been haunted by that gaze, that monologue, or simply by the spirit of freedom he embodied, share your thoughts in the comments so we can continue this conversation together. And if you love these deeper stories about cinema, art, and the people who truly change the world with their passion, hit like to support this video, subscribe to our channel to stay with us, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the journeys ahead. Thank you for stepping into the free, humane, and extraordinary world of Rutger Hauer with us. See you in the next video.